Hello, everybody. Mike Nelson here with you. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure to subscribe to the channel right now. Today we got a pretty cool guest. We got Matteo Mancuso, pretty cool guitarist. How you doing today, Matteo?
I'm doing okay. You?
Doing pretty good. So, when did your musical journey begin? I know it's an interesting story, but talk to me about how it all started out for you when you got into music.
Well, it all started when I was around 10 years old. I started playing guitar when I was 10. And, I consider myself pretty lucky because I came from a musical family. Everybody in my family is interested in music in some way. So, my father is also a guitar player. So he kind of introduced me to the guitar in a way. He was my first teacher. He was also a listening guy to me. So I was pretty lucky because I had the chance to listen to a lot of music, different music, since I was a little kid. Um, I started as a blues rock player. My very first influences were kind of, blues rock based. So Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin, all the great rock bands from the 70s. Jimi Hendrix was my first big influence. My first guitar was a Strat, actually. So Jimmy was a
Wow,
big influence on me. And then AC/DC a lot. The first songs I learned were from AC/DC. So
the easy ones,
uh,
right?
yeah, yeah. Um, and then I switched to um, I began to study classical guitar when I was 14 years old at the high school, and that helped me a lot to achieve the technique I have now. And many people are asking me if I started with classical guitar because of my technique, but I actually started with the electric and then study classical guitar later on. So yeah, that was my kind of introduction to music. And I started with fingers simply because I saw my father playing a lot of classical guitar back then, and I just thought that every guitar was meant to be played with fingers. I didn't know that you should play electric guitar with pick and classical guitar with fingers. I didn't know about this difference. So I started like uh, with a bass-like technique like that, and that was my kind of first introduction to guitar. And then I go in deep with this technique when I started playing some classical. So yeah, that was my kind of introduction to music. Yeah.
Now, how did you specifically, develop your style at a at an early age playing guitar? What it could have went either way, but how did you kind of get into your style of guitar?
Well, it was like a mix of many different things because especially when I was studying also classical guitar, I discovered a lot of technical things that I can do with fingers and you maybe can't do properly with pick. So I was concentrating a lot with taking advantage of my fingerstyle technique. And that's when I developed the more my vocabulary, let's say. I wanted to have like a vocabulary where you really take an advantage of all your four fingers. So that's when I started concentrating more on this stuff on guitar. Um, and also I was really passionate about jazz music, and my father introduced me to the old jazz guys, people like Django Reinhardt, Barney Castle, Wes Montgomery, one of my favorite players, and even people from the 80s like Pat Metheny, George Benson, these kind of guys. And I I was really interested in improvisation. I wanted to be able to play through the changes. It was really challenging to me at the start, but I was really passionate about it, and I began to copying some stuff, transcribing some stuff, and then fused all of that stuff fused into my rock playing. So I was really interested in players that had that kind of a fusion thing to it. People like Mike Stern, John Scofield, Scott Anderson, Frank Gambale, this kind of stuff, where you have like a rock player, but with a vocabulary of a jazz player. I was really into that. I wanted to be like that kind of players. So that was my first introduction to jazz. Um, and that helped me a lot to achieve the technique I have now, the vocabulary I have now, especially. So it was kind of a mix between all of those things. I didn't really have periods of time where I only listened one thing, you know. I was always listening to whatever music I was able to gather. So that's why I don't consider myself a rock player or a jazz player. It's just something in between. And I like the fact that my music can be really labeled as rock or jazz or fusion. It's just my music, let's say. Yeah.
Now, what about when you were learning guitar? Was it important for you to learn the blues first as a young guitarist? You know, people always talk about learning like the simple blues chords. Is that important for you or for young guitarists in general?
Yeah, that was really important. I mean, it was my first introduction to playing through the changes, actually. The blues was like my first kind of structure in order to play through the changes. And I really like people like Robin Ford, for example. They are really into the blues, but they can sneak in some jazz phrasing in it. People like Scott Anderson also are like that. So yeah, the blues was really important even for the expression of the guitar. You learn the bending, you learn the vibrato, and so the blues was really important to me. I really like people, one of my favorite guitar players is Eric Johnson. Eric Johnson is an incredible blues player as well, other than being an exceptional virtuoso, So yeah, blues, I think it's one of the most important things you can learn, actually. Yeah.
Now, I saw your interview with Rick Beato. You were talking about Eddie Van Halen and how important he was for your development. You know, after listening to so many great guitarists, do you think he's the greatest ever?
Eddie, it is for sure one of the greatest innovators. I can't say it's the greatest ever because we can't really say. It's a matter of preference, Somebody said that Django was the greatest ever.
Yeah.
Somebody said that Wes was the greatest ever. Usually it is Jimmy that they usually say that he is the greatest ever because I think from the innovation perspective, he was the player that innovated more if you compare them to the other players. But I think real innovators, if I have to name a few, will be Django, Jimmy, and Eddie Van Halen. These three, I believe, they are the most important ones. And also from the jazz fusion world, I would say Alan Allsworth was the one
Yeah.
that innovated more. And but there was more on the jazz fusion side of things. So yeah, these four guys, I believe they were the most innovative in a way. So yeah.
Now, how did your professional career kind of kick off for you? When did it kind of start? Of course, you started out very young. But when did you finally kind of go pro into guitar?
Well, it actually started during the pandemic because I really had the time to do more videos. So I kind of had more, uh, I started to getting more views and all of that. And then uh, they started to um, there were more videos of also players talking about me. 2020 was the period where the Steve Vai video came out. Steve Vai talking about me came out. Joe Bonamassa talking about me came out in 2020. So it all started in that period simply because I had more time to do videos at home. That's it. And I started to do more personal stuff. I was done with covers. I was bored with just making covers, So I started to release my own stuff, doing more original material with my trio. So that was when my career changed actually. 2021, I started to have my personal manager to manage some of my things. I had my first booking. So pandemic was a really negative thing, but it was also it was also positive for me because I finally had time to release more stuff. Yeah, so 2022 and 2023 were the years where I played the most live. and I really had a lot of fun. It was incredible, you know. Yeah, and now I released my first album last year in 2023. So yeah, after the first album came out, it all changed, you know. It changed also the perspective. Um, and you know, I'm starting to like more and more playing live. It's something that I was missing before actually 2021, 2022, you know. So yeah, it all began basically during the pandemic, and then it all started like that. Yeah.
Now, talk to me about the power of the internet that really helped you out, of course, because you were, kind of you became kind of YouTube famous playing the guitar. Is that now kind of the way you think for many young musicians now? You gotta have to just start playing on your own and film yourself sometimes.
Well, the positive thing is that you no longer have to be in a big city in order to get well known. I did everything I did from a small town near Palermo, and I never saw Los Angeles, or I never been in big cities, you know, like living in big cities. So you no longer have to move in order to be well known. You know, back in the days, you needed to be in LA, or maybe you needed to be in New York if you were interested about jazz, or London, you know. But the positive thing is that you can do a lot of work from home. But the negative thing is that you need to be also an entertainer, kind of. You need to be a musician and um, I don't know how to say it in English, like a content creator
Yeah,
also. So that's a negative thing because I think there are two separate things. In order to be a musician, you need to play live, you need to uh, release music and all of that. The content creator, on the other hand, is another thing. So um, you need to do a lot of videos. The quality of the videos needs to be on point, you know, and there are two separate works. You need to do both actually to succeed, and and that's you know that's when it gets tough, you know, because it's not for everyone. Like, I don't consider myself a content creator. I'm just a musician, and I want to be a musician. Like, I want that my main work is to play live and release records, not making videos. Making
yeah,
videos is a second thing, and sometimes people mix up these two things, and it's okay, but we need to separate like content creators from real musicians, let's say. If you can do both, it's a great thing because you will have numbers on Instagram, YouTube, and all of that. And it's a positive thing because you can do it from home. Now the work has changed a little bit. So also the income of a musician needs to be, you need to have like separate incomes. You can't rely anymore on live music, you know. You need to have like instructional material on the internet, and then you have also live, and then you also like uh, private lessons and all of that. So everybody now is trying to do everything, you know. Everybody is a teacher, everybody is a content creator, everybody's a musician also. So that's why sometimes it gets a little bit tough. I think in order to be a musician now, you need to diversify your income, basically. And thanks to the internet, we can do that now. But it's not like in the old days when, in order to be a musician, you just need to play live. You know, it's not like that anymore. That's it.
yeah. Or of course, in the old days, you just sold records and made a good income, of course, just off selling music and playing live, of course.
Yeah, yeah. Now you need to, selling music and selling instructional material, selling uh, sound for
Merchandise,
the
yeah.
pedal board, merchandise. Yeah, that's why I said you need to diversify your income. Yeah.
Now, talk to me about the first record, Journey. The Journey, of course, this was recorded with your trio. Talk to me about this first record and kind of the process of when you wrote it and when it was finally recorded. Was this recorded at a regular studio, or did you guys kind of do this remotely?
No, it was actually recorded in a regular studio. I have an home studio in my town, so we luckily have a lot of time to, um, produce the sounds, rehearse because it was my own studio. So um, we started like I wanted to do a trio album first, so we started more like a jazz trio, let's say. But then I started to implement more guitars in it. So it was more like an arranged thing at the end. And so that's why there are tunes like, for example, Blues for John. There is like a trio basic kind of standard, and other tunes like Drop D, where there are a lot of guitars and it's more like arranged in a way. And the first thing I wanted to do an album that wasn't associated with one style or one genre. I wanted to do an album where there is the rock song, there's the jazz song, there is the fusion song. So because that's what I am basically. I can't really do just one style. I like the fact that the album has a lot of different tunes. Yeah, and we luckily have a lot of time to record because my own studio, and we really have a lot of time. Maybe too much because when you have your studio at home, you get lazy a little bit. And yeah, but right now I'm considering the idea of doing another album on my studio. I think maybe by the end of this year we'll be ready. But I like the fact, that when you have time and you are in the room with your bandmates and you are relaxed, you know that you are not paying the studio per hour, and you are relaxed. And I like the fact that hanging with your bandmates is almost as important as playing and rehearse with them. It's a very personal thing for me. I think in order to sound good with other players, I think you also need to be friends with. It's a really important thing for me. So the hanging out thing is really important, especially for the music we do, because we improvise a lot on the stage. So you need to have a lot of confidence. You need to know the other player in order to change direction during the concert. So yeah, that's what I like about improvised music. Yeah.
Now, you would you say with your kind of music, your music is more like a collaborative effort when writing or when performing it live? Is it more collaborative, or is it more kind of still your project and you kind of put together all the ideas?
It depends on the song. Like for example, Drop D was already written all by me, and then we arranged some things with my trio. Some other tunes like Blues for John, for example, it w- it became more like a song when I worked it with my trio, basically. So we were just playing and shaping stuff, and arranging the song with them. So it depends on the song. If it is more like a jazz kind of stuff, I prefer to work more with the people with my trio. If it is like an arranged kind of rock and roll thing, I prefer to do like a full demo and then send it to the guys, to my drummer and my bass player, and it's more like a prepared thing sometimes. Yeah, it's kind of a mix in between.
So overall, you were happy with the way the first album came out with the production and everything with it.
Yeah, I did the production, and we actually did the mixing and mastering in another studio, but all the production and the recording was in my home studio.
Now, for young players out there, what would be your advice to them? Like maybe if they want to start playing guitar, or maybe if they want to play like jazz or any sort of genre, what would be the way to kind of like pick a genre? There's so many different ways you can go with a guitar, but what's the best way to pick
Well, I
some
think
out would want to
the
play?
I think the listening process is really, really important. Some people underestimate the listening process, but it's really important because you need to know what excites you the most about guitar. So there's so much music out there that maybe you still don't know what is the thing that excites you the most. So exploring different styles and genres is very important in order to know what music you want to do with your guitar, And then, blending different styles will come with time. I was able to blend jazz and rock and fusion because I listened to a lot of different music, and I had the chance to listen a lot of different music since when I was very young. So uh, I think a good suggestion would be play what excites you the most about guitar. If you like shred rock 80s kind of stuff, it's okay if that thing makes you happy. So if you play what makes you happy on the stage, people will uh, realize it, and you will transmit this happiness to the people around you. So it's really important to play the things that you are happy with, and not just, uh, trying to learn a lot of things simply because someone told to you to learn jazz, maybe. Um, it's a matter of finding your own balance. I mean, there's so much guitar music out there that it's really, really tough to um, decide what you want to do, Like, how can you realize if you like Tommy Emmanuel or Yngwie Malmsteen more? They are two completely different instruments when you think about it. It's guitar, but it's not the same instrument. Um, and that's because guitar has so many ways and so many techniques, so many styles that sometimes it's really difficult to find your own self on this instrument. Like for other instruments, it is more standardized. If you play piano or clarinet, for example, there is one way to play, there is one way to get into the technique. Maybe there's a different vocabulary and all of that, but guitar is really a mess when it comes to technique. Everybody has his own, basically. Nobody is holding the pick the same way. Nobody is using pick, and nobody has the same hand. So everybody is maybe grabbing the chords in a different way. So that's why it's so hard to, you know, it's guitar is one of my favorite instruments because you project a lot of your personality in it. So it's a very personal thing where you're talking about guitar. So that's why it's a special instrument. Yeah.
Now, is guitar gear important for guitar players? Like, can you be a successful guitarist on any guitar, or what do you think about gear and all that? Is that an important factor?
Well, I think that one of the most important thing is uh, having a gear that you know a lot rather than having an expensive gear. It's more important to know your gear very well rather than have a really expensive gear and not knowing everything about it. I prefer to have like two or three pedals, but knowing them pretty well rather than having like 12 pedals, but you can do only one thing with them. So it's really important to know your gear rather than have a lot of gear. That's it. And when it comes to guitar, it doesn't need to be expensive, but it needs to be reliable. Like one of the most important things when you're buying a guitar is that it stays in tune. That's it. It stays in tune, you are comfortable with it, then it's a good guitar. That's it. You don't need to spending a lot of time finding the right wood for the fretboard or the right pickup combination. They are all secondary things. The important thing is that it is in tune, at least for me, because you need to make music with it. If you want a particular sound, you can achieve that sound with the pedal board. You can play around with the pickups. You can pretty much, especially if you have single coils. Single coils, I think they are really versatile pickups. So when you are playing around with your guitar, you really have a wide variety of sounds already without pedals and without amp. You just with your guitar alone, you already have a wide variety of sounds. So you don't need to have a lot of different pedals in order to achieve different sounds. You just have to experiment with your guitar, maybe playing with the volume on 5, with a blended single coil. It's really something that you need to explore more before buying gear. So yeah, I think it's a matter of finding a guitar that stays in tune and finding a bunch of pedals that you know pretty well. And that's it.
Now, what's your favorite guitar that you're using right now? Maybe a guitar that you're really digging right now that you're using.
Well, I mainly use my custom Rapstar. It's a Yamaha Rapstar, and it's a custom model made for me it was made in 2019, and it is based on the regular Rapstar. And there are not really big differences. But you know, it's a guitar, it's a very reliable guitar. It stays in tune pretty well. There are locking tuners because you know I'm lazy. I don't want to do the I want to change strings very fast. So locking tuners were my first choice. I have two humbuckers. They are Lollar Imperial pickups, pretty good sounding humbuckers. And the rest is basically a regular Rapstar, nothing fancy. I like really traditional guitars. So yeah, for what I have now, this is the guitar I use the most. I sometimes use also the Pacifica, is the Stratocaster model by Yamaha, basically. I also use some classical guitar once in a while. Um, I think it's called the CGTA. Um, it's also by Yamaha. And you know, I have tons of guitars at home. My very first professional guitar was actually a Gibson SG, and that was the guitar I played the most when I was a teenager. But I chose the Yamaha Rapstar because it was very close to the Gibson SG, and it was a little bit more versatile because I wanted to play also jazz with a solid body guitar. So the Rapstar is a pretty good guitar if you want to sound a little bit more versatile and not just playing with distortion. You know, that's what I like about it. Yeah.
Now, next week you have a couple of shows here in the LA area. If you could talk a little bit about those and maybe more information for the viewers out there.
Yeah. I will have first of all two shows in San Pedro, and I think both of them are sold out. Maybe. Then we will hit Bakersfield in North LA. So these three gigs will be the Los Angeles area gigs, basically. Then we will hit Sacramento, and after Sacramento, the last gig will be in Chicago, and then we will go back home in Italy, of course. And it is pretty exciting to me because they are the first gigs with my trio in USA. So I never played with my trio here. I only played for the NAM a few years ago, last year, and in 2019 was my first time at NAM. But at that time I was alone. I was just playing with backing tracks, you know. So this is the first time with real people playing on the stage. Yeah, and that's really exciting for us. We will play some tunes from my first album. So most of the concert will be dedicated to the first album, actually, The Journey. And yeah, can't wait. It will be a lot of fun.
Now, what's the rest of the year looking like for you in terms of recording or touring? Do you have any concrete plans after this tour?
Yeah, we will. We are starting to organize a summer tour. So we will go back on the road in May and June, that kind of period. And when I will go back home, it will be on February 5th. And from there, I will start working on some new material because I want to release another album by the end of this year. I don't know if I will be able to do it because I have a very short time. But I will try, of course. I always want to try to compose new things. This looks to be the right time. Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you, Matteo, for your time today. It was great talking to you.
Thanks. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a good day, everybody.